All right. Thank you all for joining. I believe we have a good amount of people watching now, so let's go ahead and get started. So, thank you for joining today's meetup. Today's topic is designing for accessibility with Apple Vision Pro. Really excited to host this meetup because I feel like one, Apple Vision Pro isn't here yet, so obviously not enough people are talking about it yet. But then two, accessibility is so freaking important. And again, I feel like it's one of those things that gets left behind in all of the jazz and paraz that goes on around everything else related to spatial computing. So I think this is the most important event that we could host before we talk about everything else and how to build an app and anything else. So let's go ahead and hop right into designing for accessibility with Apple Vision Pro. All right. And so, again, thank you for joining. I really do appreciate you for being here. And obviously, this is what we're talking about here today. So, we're going to start by just reviewing exactly what is Apple Vision Pro, what makes it unique from other head mounted displays, as they call them, or maybe just headsets, if that's the word you're used to. But definitely, this is unique and it's the most accessible headset that's out there. So I definitely want to show off a lot of the features and again, make you aware of the things that you need to be doing if you plan to build an app for Apple Vision Pro, or maybe you don't. Again, it's just a very accessible device, and I think it's extremely important that everyone is aware how accessible this device is. All right, and so of course, before we get into the meat and potatoes today, volunteering. So again, I really appreciate you for being here at today's event. This is a free meetup. I've been doing this since 2018 for free. So again, I really do appreciate you for being here. And actually, let's go back a slide because I feel like that's what was missing. There we go. I thought there was something missing there. So for the people who are joining us for the first time ever today, this is just a quick review of exactly how this all came to be. So at the bottom, that's me. My name's Casey. Nice to meet you. Through me, I created my company, Near Future Marketing, and through my company, I actually, in 2018, created this meetup named AR Today, which stands for Augmented Reality Today. So since 2018, we've been talking about ARKit and augmented reality and just everything related to that. And so it's amazing to finally see this all come to fruition to, again, in less than a week here, we'll see Vision Pro in stores. So really amazing time for you to be joining this meetup because, again, I've been working on this for years. If you ask me, I expected Vision Pro to come out in like 2019. So it's 2024. We're finally here. And again, I'm really excited to share all of this content with you. But let's go ahead and continue. So this is where I left off. Volunteering. I do all of this on my own. I pay for it all on my own. I do everything completely by myself. I make the slides, I write code, I host the events, everything. So if you would like to help me out, or meaning joining this meetup as a co-organizer, I would love that. I would love to have anyone else helping me out with this stuff. It's not necessarily, or it is easy, but definitely, organizing an event, it requires me to sit down for a couple of hours and get all of this stuff ready for everyone. So if you join, I can promise you there's tons of free gifts and rare networking opportunities that happen for me all the time. So I'd be open to sharing that with you. You can learn new skills if you want. And there's free access to exclusive events and paid gigs. This just means, like, if you check our meetup right now, there actually are some upcoming events. I believe there's Developer Week. You can get a free pass through our meetup for Developer Week, again, because this meetup has just been recognized by many in the community. There's also the upcoming Microsoft Mesh event. So again, there's things that you'll get access to if you're helping out. And this is really how I got started in meetups. Is I started by volunteering for a different meetup, and eventually I felt like, hey, it's time for me to make my own so I can really control the narrative, and that's why we're here today. All right, so that's enough about volunteering. I also do tutoring and private lessons. This is something I probably can't offer for too much longer. I have a few students and I just have a million projects going on. But definitely, I put this slide up here for a reason. So if you would like to get tutoring or private lessons on coding, augmented reality, spatial computing experiences, hit me up right there. It's nearfuture.marketing/private lectures. But definitely, this is something I don't think I can actually offer too much longer. So please, if you're interested, or if you have a school or a business that's interested, let me know and we can negotiate from there. And then I just kind of hacked this slide together just now. But branded AR, VR apps. So I have more to show, but again, not too much time left before the event. So what I'm trying to highlight here is I can help you build apps. If you have an app idea and you don't know how to build it, I can build it for you. If you are already building your app and you just need some help, I can help you build it. But go ahead and check out my services page. Again, as a business, I do actually make apps for people as well. All right, so that's all the advertisements I have for you today. Let's hop right into the real deal content here. So again, welcome to Designing for Accessibility with Apple Vision Pro. And today's topic, of course, is accessibility on Apple Vision Pro. So for the people who aren't extremely aware of everything related to Apple Vision Pro, like myself, we're gonna start by just reviewing all of the hardware that makes this device so special, and then we'll hop right into some really beautiful examples of accessibility on Apple Vision Pro. All right, let's go ahead and hop over to our next slide here. And we'll start by talking about the unmatched screen resolution and graphics performance. So what's really unique about Vision Pro is they fit a lot of pixels into a very small space. That's what this animation is showing you here. Again, why that's important for accessibility is because it means that text is extremely legible. There's 23 million pixels inside of this thing. It's 4K per eye. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you have vision, you can actually see very well. And if you have low vision, then it's a lot easier to see content on than any other device. All right, so that's the unmatched screen resolution. Next up, we have ultra low latency spatial audio. So this is really important because one, it makes things feel real. Ultra low latency, it just means that there's not really a huge delay in the sound. It feels like it's happening in real time. And spatial audio means that it feels like it's happening around you. Think like surround sound. What's also unique is because of the processing chips that are on the Vision Pro, which are essentially the same, not essentially, they are the same as a MacBook, you actually have the computational power to basically make the sounds sound like they're in different parts of the room, but it's also based on the materials in the room. So if there's a couch next to you, if there's a hard wood floor under you, that actually changes the way that the sound sounds as well. So it's really cool, and I think that's something that's unique to Apple Vision Pro because again, it's computationally expensive. There's also fine-tuned control of immersion. Again, other headsets, they have kind of a toggle where it's either on or off. It's VR or AR. You don't really have that in between. With Apple Vision Pro, this is one of my favorite features because when I used it, I noticed right away that this feature that you're seeing here, this VR kind of mode, which they call an environment, using that digital crown at the top, you can dial it in or out, but you can also dial it like, 10%, 20%, 30%. And so I thought that was really cool because when I had it set up, everything behind and around me was completely clear. It's, AR, it's the normal real world, but everything in front of me to the amount that I wanted to control was in the VR, that virtual environment like you're seeing here. And what's cool about that is I could literally have my hands and I could see my hands and the keyboard and everything else in front of me in this virtual environment, but I was still completely aware of my surroundings. So you could imagine if you have pets or if you have kids, it's a really, really great feature because now you are kind of halfway in between two worlds, or you can just go completely to kind of that AR mode and then you're just anchored in the real world. But definitely that fine-tuned control of immersion is something that's unique and you won't find it on any other platform. And I will say it's definitely a luxurious feature. All right, let's keep going here. And one more thing I want to mention, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and put those in the chat. Again, I am a one-man band, so I may not see it immediately, but I definitely plan to answer any questions that you put in the chat. So I'm just pulling up the chat here so I can see, but let's go ahead and keep going. All right, so up next we have hyper-realistic game environments. And this is something I think not enough people realize. Anytime you're using an AR or VR device, you're actually inside of a video game world. Even if it looks like real life, it's still technically a video game. And so, you don't necessarily have to play a game, but why I'm highlighting this is anything that you've seen on a PlayStation 5, it can happen on Vision Pro. So the graphics are that good. And again, it just really allows you to be fully immersed in a completely different world that has physics and reflections and spatial audio and everything that you would expect if you were actually in that place. All right. Up next, unparalleled eye tracking plus true multitasking. So what I meant by this is the eye tracking is really, really good. I mean, it blew my mind, honestly, in my experience using the eye tracking on Vision Pro. I would say that it's the best way to describe it is it's like a computer that can read your brain. It's like a computer that knows what you're thinking. So when you look at something, it knows. You look and it's pointing at that content and it highlights and it reflects or it bounces a little bit, but definitely it's a really great user interface. Because the only thing faster than clicking is that it's look and click. So, there's point and click, but the only thing faster than point and click would be look and click, and they've really mastered this technology on Vision Pro. And last but not least is the most personal wearable computer. So when you think about something like AirPods, AirPods are a personal computer. They're a wearable device. But every now and then you might let someone else use your AirPods. You might even let them, you have one in your ear and they have the other one in their ear, maybe wash off the wax a little bit. But, it's a very personal device. Same thing with an Apple Watch, very, very personal, very unlikely that you'll be letting other people wear your Apple Watch. And this device, I think, is also, the most personal device. There's prescription lenses that you can add on. So that's one aspect of it. There's the light seal. Again, it's going on your face, so you may or may not want to share that with other people as it goes on their face and your face. And also, it's pretty expensive, so definitely, you don't want other people to accidentally break it. So why I'm really highlighting this, though, is because, again, it's your personal device, so it's really meant to be fine-tuned to the needs that you have. And that's why today's meetup is focused on accessibility, because there's so many accessibility features, and I feel like no one has talked about them, no one notices them. And maybe it's because, again, I'm a developer. I've taken the time to watch all of the Apple Vision Pro videos for developers, and I'm aware of all of the different features. And again, I've already tried Vision Pro, so I've really had the time and experience to really be aware of why some of these features are important. But let's go ahead and highlight what's important here. Before we do that, I did want to mention Xcode 15.2, so just the latest version of Xcode. If you go to the App Store on your Mac, you can actually download the latest version of Xcode, and it includes Reality Composer Pro as well as the Vision Pro simulator. So this is great news because previously it was only available in the beta version of Xcode, so you had to kind of go on the back end, download some stuff, download some more stuff, and wait. Now it's a very standardized process. You just go to the App Store, download Xcode, and check the box for visionOS. So my recommendations, you need an M1 Mac or later. That's just part of the requirements. Again, the Vision Pro uses the M2 chip. So if you're using an Intel Mac, it's, I don't want to say impossible, but definitely graphically speaking, you're fighting uphill. Just go ahead and get that M1 Mac and you'll be doing the bare minimum with that. I do recommend 50 plus gigabytes of free space just because, again, 3D models, sounds, all sorts of things happen when you create spatial experiences. So I would say at least 50 gigabytes is what you need. And then tutorials. I actually have already published last year. I believe there's 4 or 5 videos that I published on visionOS beta. So if you want a basic entry-level coding course for Vision Pro, I've already posted it on my YouTube. Check us out, Near Future Marketing on YouTube. But yeah, those tutorials are there. Some things have changed slightly since that was the beta, but I would say those are still some really good grounding tutorials. And there's also the WWDC 23 sessions from Apple. But my videos, they're really, really straightforward. I tried to make them as short as possible, as on the mark as possible, to just say, hey, let's pretend that you have absolutely no programming experience. Let's teach you how to build your first app on Vision Pro, even if you have no experience. So if you're interested in that, check out the videos. But let's keep going. We have so much content to cover. So, I'm sorry if I'm talking a little fast. It's because I know that there's about 30 more slides after this. All right. And so yeah, let's hop right in. So accessibility, we'll start by just showing you where to find it. So this is the settings menu of Vision Pro, and you'll scroll down to the bottom, you'll click accessibility, and there's many features that you can turn on for accessibility. So let's actually take a look at that list next. And so here are all the accessibility features on Apple Vision Pro. Now, something unique that I heard in the developer docs videos that I forgot about is that this is the most accessibility features they have ever released a first generation product with. So this is more accessibility than the Apple Watch. This is more accessibility than the iPhone. But there's a really great amount of features here. There's dynamic type, there's voiceover, there's zoom, there's reduce motion, there's voice control, there's dwell control, there's type to Siri, increasing contrast, hearing aids. There are so many accessible features on this device. And before I even dive too deep here, I feel like I didn't highlight the biggest point, which is this device is usable by people who are blind or low vision. That's the big difference between Apple Vision Pro and any other device out there. To my knowledge, I have a Quest 3 back there, I have a HoloLens, I have all these different devices, but this is the most accessible device. There's no other device that allows for blind people to literally be able to walk around their house or understand their surroundings or still play games. So I just really want to highlight that because you're going to see that in this presentation, but that's kind of the big difference here is you don't need to have vision and you don't even need to have hands to use this device. All right, and so let's start by talking about voiceover. So to activate voiceover, you're going to triple press the digital crown. So that's that sliding kind of button that we saw on the top of the headset there. And you'll triple tap that to turn voiceover on or off. When voiceover is on, you can use different finger pinches on different hands. So I'll show you a little bit of that, but basically the default hand actions, they actually change a little bit. That way you can actually navigate things with your voice as well. And then if your app uses SwiftUI, it should support those standard controls and accessibility modifiers. And then one more thing, VoiceOver can't interact with objects generated by RealityKit unless they're made accessible with RealityKit's accessibility component. And we'll talk more about that later. I just like to provide these guiding slides before I give you some cool visuals. So let's hop over. 1, 2, 3.
Heavy beam. Choose how you'll cheer up grumpy clouds.
So hopefully you can hear that. I'm not sharing my audio directly, but basically that's the voiceover feature. So again, you tap the crown on the top 3 times, and then it will narrate the app that you're currently in. So all of the content that's within this app, make a heart with 2 hands, use a pinch gesture or compatible device, all of that can be narrated by the system. All right, now we just mentioned this RealityKit accessibility components. So within, let's say you're making a 3D game, these are 3D objects. So how do we make them interactable? Well, by default, they're not interactable with accessibility features. So you definitely need to go in as the developer and add a little bit of code just to basically say, hey, this is this thing. And whenever voiceover turns on, I want it to call it this, and I want it to, announce the actions that are happening and different things like that. So we'll take a look at that. But again, this is just a really important point, which is, by default, Vision Pro is accessible. But as a developer, you're going to need to go a small extra step just to make sure that your application is very accessible for whoever wants to use it, no matter their mobility capabilities, no matter their vision capabilities, no matter their hearing capabilities, no matter their cognitive capabilities. It's really important that you go in and make it accessible for everyone. Because again, this is the first time as a developer we've been able to make these type of experiences accessible. All right, and so for those of you who do know how to code, I just decided to include this little code snippet here. But basically, hopefully you can see my mouse here. You would set up this accessibility component. From there, you need to also mark, if it's like an object, you'll say, hey, it's an accessibility element. Let's go ahead and mark that as true. You can also add some traits, like if it's a button and if it plays sounds. And then as I mentioned, we can add a label to say, hey, this is a cloud. we can also add a value label to say like grumpy. So the example we have is called, there's a demo app, I believe it's called Happy Beams, and you use your hand to form a heart, and every time you shoot a cloud with this heart, it basically goes from grumpy to happy. So with this code here, we can actually announce to the user when the cloud changes from grumpy to happy, because again, maybe they have low vision, maybe they can't see the smiley face that's on that cloud's face. Well, voiceover can still announce that, hey, you just made that cloud happy. And that's kind of what we're seeing down here. This is a variable, it's a true or false. And so basically we're just saying, you know, when we update it, we need to change it to happy or grumpy. All right, so quick coding example there, but let's keep going. And we'll talk about direct gesture mode in voiceover. So this is another extension of voiceover mode. And basically, when enabled, voiceover does not process standard gestures, allowing direct hand input processing by the app. So what this does is direct gesture means that it's not going to, when you have voiceover on and you try to click on something like you normally would with your right hand, instead of clicking, it actually navigates through the menu. And you would click using your left hand. So when we turn on direct gesture mode, it actually disables this default feature, and instead the user is able to use their hands and actually interact with 3D content again. So as it says here, it's important for apps that rely on hand gestures as primary input. And then it requires feedback to be given, such as announcements. So as I mentioned earlier, like if, you know, I'm using my hand and I do happen to shoot a cloud and it turns from grumpy to happy, rather than just, you know, making that cloud animate, we also need to announce that the cloud is now happy. So this is a feature of direct gesture mode. And again, I'm mentioning it because it's a very important accessibility feature. Here's a demo.
1. Heavy beam. 3 clouds above and in front of you to the right. Direct gestures enabled. Press the crown to act. Casting beam.
Yeah, and hopefully you can hear that. Again, the audio on this part might not be the loudest, but I think if I do share my audio, there might be feedback since I'm streaming and there's a microphone and there's a lot going on here. But hopefully you understood that demo, and I'll actually just quickly replay that.
3, 2, 1.
So what you're seeing here is on the bottom right side here,
3 clouds above and in front of you to the
notice
right.
how they're using their left
Direct
hand.
gestures enabled. Press the crown to
And
act. Casting
by
beam.
doing that, they turned on that direct gesture mode. So it's a 3-finger tap on your left hand, because by default, the right hand is the default. So 3-finger tap with your left hand, and that actually turns on that direct gesture mode. All right, so again, just a small thing. Let's keep going. And this one's about head anchoring. So this is something that you should try to avoid doing too much, because again, not everyone has full mobility of their neck. So it's not recommended to anchor content to the head that often. This feature that I'm showing you here specifically is the zoom feature. So Apple Vision Pro does have a zoom feature that allows you to zoom in and see things a little bit better. And so this is just a quick example of that. But let's go ahead and talk about head anchoring. So with head anchors, you want to allow placement of the UI relative to a specific point. Head anchors, as it kind of implies, follow your head position. And so you want to use these things sparingly because it's difficult for people with low vision. So it's not something that you should never do, but it definitely is something that, again, not everyone has full neck mobility, not everyone has great vision. So you don't want to anchor something to their head necessarily. Or if you do, again, keep it very, very few and just not a lot of things doing that, basically. All right. Bouncing off of that, let's talk about motion. So, you know, rapid movement, bouncing, wave-like movement, zooming animations, multi-axis movement, meaning it's up and down, it's left and right, it's in and out, spinning, rotation effects, and persistent background effects. These are things that you should try to avoid at all costs if you can. Again, these just are not very accessible animations and actions, and you want to make things work for everyone, because some people experience motion sickness. There's all sorts of things that could be affecting your users, and this is a completely new device, completely new medium. So these are some of the recommendations from Apple to avoid making people feel sick. And here's the reduce motion feature. So I'll let this play first and then I'll explain it. All right, and so it's really, really subtle. So let's actually play that back and I'll explain what just happened here. So right away, you'll notice that the water here and the sky, both of these elements are moving. So this is an environment in Apple Vision Pro. It's not the real world, even though it looks really good. But basically, this water, to look really realistic, it ripples, it moves, and the clouds, they also move. And you can turn on the reduce motion feature, which will actually turn down the amount of motion happening in some of the elements like this. So if we hit play again, watch the water. Notice how now the water is much more still. And again, this really helps deliver the same experience as far as a visual experience without, having so much motion that might make someone sick or dizzy or however it affects them. So again, you want to code your experiences to support reduced motion. And so here's what that code looks like. Again, it's pretty simple, but you can add an environment variable and a little bit of additional code. And basically, this is how you would just reduce motion. All right, and then one more thing, utilize crossfades when you can. So again, when you have a spinning animation, when you have all these different animations that you just have to have, if you can, use some type of crossfade, because that really helps with things like motion sickness and just, again, people with low vision. It really, really helps them. All right, support for multiple input methods. So the app should support various input methods for inclusivity. We have dwell control, which allows for interaction without hands. We have pointer control, allowing using your head, wrist, or finger position to control focus. And then there's also support for Bluetooth accessories and game controllers. So let's take a look at some of these features. And we'll start with dwell control. So dwell control allows you to use a tap, a scroll, a long press, or a drag, all with your eyes. So this is completely hands-free because, again, we're talking about accessibility today. And so this is what dwell control looks like. So on that left side there, you have the controls. And notice, again, this person is now scrolling through a web page using just their eyes. And this feature, again, is called dwell control. So very, very important. And again, just another feature worth mentioning, because this might be how some of your users interact with your app. As I mentioned, there's also other devices that you could hook up. So think a gaming controller or a keyboard. And these, again, just add some additional ways to interact with this game. So for this game, Happy Beams, what they're showing here is how you can control it with one hand. So remember, by default, you need to use two hands to form a gesture to play this game. But what they do have set up through the accessibility features is the ability to use one hand. So you can use just one hand, maybe just a pinch or a finger, and you're using that to control the direction of the heart beam, which was, if we go back here, this thing here doesn't show up unless you're in this kind of accessibility mode or if you're using a game controller. So yeah, definitely just something to think about. Yes, gestures are cool. Yes, gestures are amazing, but not everyone has two hands. And so it's really important to add support in your experiences for a one-handed experience or a keyboard experience or a game controller experience, because we want everyone to be able to use your app no matter where they're coming from. This is the pointer control feature. So in the accessibility settings, you can change from eyes, which is the default pointer control, to head. So maybe it's a little bit easier to point at things with your head. We also have wrist, which is obviously your wrist, and then even index finger. So definitely, they have control over their pointer control. And this is why it's really important to design your experience because you never know. They might be using your app completely with their head and they don't have any arms at all. And that's okay. You just need to, of course, code that into your app experience to make sure that you're supporting these features across every part of your game or experience. All right, and then there's also handedness and movement sensitivity. Might as well mention it while we're here. So again, these are additional things that they may turn up or down to really change the experience for themselves. And again, that might change how the performance of your app performs. All right, let's keep going. This one, I forget the name of it, but this one is basically showing off how you can control the camera in an environment using your keyboard. And so again, not everyone will be able to move in their environment, so that's why that feature is really important. And you always want to allow people to bypass experiences that require movement. Again, you never know where your user is. They might be on an airplane, they might be on a bus, they might be in a taxi, they might be on their couch, they might be in a wheelchair. So you definitely don't want to require someone to walk 10 feet this way and 20 feet that way and 30 feet this way. You definitely want to add support for all of the different inputs, which again, keyboard is a really great way to control the camera if they have one connected. All right, let's talk about some cognitive accessibility considerations. So guided access, you can use guided access to minimize distractions and focus on single app use. There's also simplified interactions and consistent UI with SwiftUI. So again, you should be using SwiftUI if you're making a visionOS app. Yes, you can use UIKit, but in my experience, talking to Apple, working with Apple, working on a Vision Pro, you definitely want to use SwiftUI. It's the future, it's modular, it's cleaner, and it's easier. It's definitely more accessible. Let's just start there. And last but not least, you want to allow users to take their time with experiences, accommodating different processing speeds. So this is what I mentioned earlier about like the movement and just again, their settings might be different from your settings. So don't just design something that only works for you. You definitely want to take time to test this out and say, hey, what if I took an additional 10 seconds to do this action? What would that look like? Does my app support that type of wait time? Or is it just not even considering that someone might have limited range of motion? So these are all important things to think about because again, not everyone has the same memory capability. Not everyone can remember the complex gestures that you might create. So another consideration is just, don't create overly complicated gestures that are hard to remember. You want to make things as simple as possible across the entire experience. That way you maintain the accessibility for your experience. And so we can take a look at guided access next. Looks like this, pretty simple, but basically guided access allows for just that one app to be the focus. So again, there's no additional distractions going on. It's just, hey, let's focus on the content in front of us. And again, this might be a way that some of your users are using your app. All right, hearing accessibility considerations. So quality captions for audio content, these are customizable in the experience, and I'll show you what that looks like. You want to use AVKit and AV Foundation for built-in caption support, and you want to represent all audio content in captions, including directional cues. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And so a comfortable reading experience is easy to create by using pop-up captions, which render the phrase all at once and are easy to read, instead of rolling up captions which appear word by word and can cause reading fatigue and nausea when reading for a long duration. So what I just showed you here is the first example where it just all popped up, all the text was there right away. That's the right way to do it. You don't want to give people a little bit of the text piece by piece because as it says here, it increases fatigue and nausea when you're reading a lot. So, imagine like you have a movie or a game and there's just back-to-back dialogue. You don't want all of this text to slowly pop up and eventually, they're reading a book and it's just popping up word by word by word by word and it's like, when does it stop? Having it like this in our first example, where it all popped up all together, this is preferable because again, it's all there. We already know, okay, this is everything I need to read and I don't feel rushed because it's not slowly popping up each word, so I'm not feeling fatigued. So definitely turn on captions when you can, and again, make it all pop up all at once. You don't want to have it roll in piece by piece. And then subtitles are customizable. So you can customize the font, the outline, the background. But as you can see here, we have subtitles at the top that can look like that, or they can look like that in the middle, or they can look like the bottom text as well. But these are all acceptable ways to present your subtitles. And again, it just makes things a lot easier for people who can't hear. And just a reminder as well, if you're playing something like music or yeah, let's just stick with that. Background music or maybe some type of sound effect, you would want to create captions for that as well, because again, let's just imagine that they have hearing loss. Maybe they don't hear the music. Maybe they don't understand why there's no talking going on. So definitely subtitle and caption everything if you can. And you can check if closed captions are enabled in your code with this little code snippet here. All right, wow, we got through a lot of these slides a lot faster than I expected. So general accessibility best practices. So test accessibility features firsthand. It's very important that you don't just test something on your headset or in your simulator and assume that it's going to work perfectly for every other person in any environment. I think that's the biggest thing I learned very early on with creating augmented reality apps on iPhone, is that what's unique about these experiences, think like Instagram, Twitter, any other traditional 2D app, they can use these apps wherever. They can use it on the train, on the plane, on a boat, at home. Doesn't matter. Where they are does not change their user experience. But with augmented reality, it's completely different. Where they are does change their experience. If it's low lighting, the experience needs to adjust, especially on iPhone. It might not work as well. If there are motion going on, if they're on an airplane or they're on a bus, the experience tracking might get lost because they're actively moving 60 miles or 200 miles an hour. And again, the tracking is not necessarily ready for that. So it's very, very important that you test accessibility features firsthand, as well as your app. Test it in as many different environments as you can, because again, the app is actually reacting to the physical world. Flexibility and physical interaction options. So again, supporting keyboards, supporting game controllers. These are the things that are really going to extend your experience to everyone versus just the people with two hands. Clear and focused content for cognitive accessibility. So we mentioned this earlier with guided access, but again, you always want to just make your content as focused and clear as possible. This is something I learned from Apple personally. One of their practices is, with a button, it needs to be clear what's going to happen when you push that button. And I've taken that design theme everywhere with me because it makes so much sense. It's like, yeah, if you have a button and it's kind of ambiguous as to what that does, yes, people might press it, and yes, they might find the other options that you're trying to guide them to. But whenever you can, make things clear as possible. Just make it clearly say what it does, and it will add so much value for the users when they know what's going to happen if they press that button. And high quality captions for hearing accessibility. We just talked about this, but you want those high quality captions to be there, and that means that, again, customize it so it looks good with the content, and also make sure that you're highlighting any audio that's not necessarily words. So the music, the sound effects, we want to still have captions for these parts of your experience. That way the users don't feel confused, they don't feel lost, they don't feel like they're missing out on anything. All right, and so yeah, I got through these slides. I probably should have talked a little slower, but I guess that gives me time to answer some questions. So check out my website, and I'm gonna put these slides on the Meetup site here. I actually didn't link things up too well today, so I'll make sure that these are available. But the visionOS design guidelines, check that out. There's a video that's very important. I based this meetup on this video here. So creating accessible spatial experiences, definitely check that out because it's the reference video that I used to make today's meetup. And then design considerations for vision and motion. This is also another important video. And then check out our meetup. We have an official meetup. It's called Augmented Reality Today. Some of you may be watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube, and this may be your first time joining us. But definitely join our meetup because we host many other events. And today I want to focus on accessibility, but in the future, we'll definitely be focusing more on code and creating visionOS apps. Oh, there you go, helpful links. All right, and then Thanks for watching. So again, the recording will be posted on YouTube later today. Please subscribe. Go ahead and join our meetup. It's meetup.com/augmented-reality-today. And then check out our website. It's nearfuture.marketing. And don't forget to check out our swag shop as well. But that really is it for today's presentation. So I'm glad that we got through it a little bit faster actually, because that gives me time to answer questions. And I'll show you one more thing, so don't go quite yet. Let's go ahead and open this up. So I guess we'll start here. Again, this is our meetup, Augmented Reality Today. Check us out. We're almost at 1,000 members, so please, I would really appreciate it. If you're not a member, please join, because it would make me so happy to see this number hit 1,000, especially before March 25th. I started this meetup on my birthday in 2018, so if we can get to 1,000 members before my birthday, that would really fill my soul. But let's go ahead to my website here, which again is going to be nearfuture.marketing. And from my website, you'll go to Augmented Reality Today. This is where you can find anything about our meetup. And as I mentioned, I actually did not even update my website for this event, so I do apologize for that. But if you go ahead and click Learning Materials here, this is where I'll be posting the slides from today's presentation. So let's actually go ahead and create that folder right now in the meetup. And I think I just need to switch accounts here. And I also need to log in. All right, there we go. But again, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask those, and I'll go ahead and start checking the chat to see if there's any good questions here. Music is a little loud. Awesome, looks good. Okay, no questions yet. But if you have any questions, please let me know. While we wait though, I will go ahead and upload everything that you need so that you have those links. So we'll go back and we'll go to our learning materials and we'll switch accounts again. There we go. And then I will go to the public facing, oh, not there, sorry. And again, I just didn't have enough time to do all of this before, but I'm glad that I'm doing it now. So here we go, learning materials, and we'll just create a new folder and we'll call it designing for accessibility with Apple Vision Pro. Perfect. And then inside of this folder, I will be adding the presentation. I'll do that after I end the stream though, because that could add a good amount of lag. It's a pretty big presentation. But again, I think we actually ran early on time here. So if there are any questions, I would love to answer any questions that you have in the chat. And if not, again, thank you so much for your time. We definitely are going to have another Vision Pro meetup here very soon. I think right now it's important that I focus on these basics like accessibility and just what is Vision Pro. If you missed our last meetup, go ahead and check out that live stream on YouTube. But that really is it for today. I just moved pretty fast. I don't see any questions necessarily. So you know what? Let's go ahead and give everyone their time back. Again, thank you so much for joining. I really do enjoy hosting these events. I hope to do an in-person event again soon one day. But again, I do love doing the virtual events because it's accessible for everyone. So with that, I think we've covered everything we need to cover here. You all have a great day. Join the meetup, check out the website, and subscribe on YouTube. I'll see you soon. Take care.